All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. As a reminder, I'm Katie, and today with me I have Josue's much more attractive understudy, Aaron, who you have all gotten to get to know over email over the last couple weeks. You're probably getting sick of hearing from both of us right now.
One of us, both of us.
So before we start the resume webinar, Aaron just wanted to go through a couple of reminders for everyone. And then at the very end, we'll open it up for questions, both on all of the housekeeping items as well as resume questions. So.
Sure. So first of all, thank you to all of you guys who've sent your photos. For those of you who haven't, please send them as soon as you can so we can get your IDs ready for you guys. Also a reminder, we need your hotel information if you're planning on staying at the hotel, if you're not planning on staying at the hotel, so that we can go ahead and make the reservations for the rest of the group. I believe the deadline is today, so for the roughly 10 of you who haven't given us your information or haven't said where you're planning on staying, if you can fill out that Google spreadsheet, that'd be great. Also, thank you to all of you guys who have sent your payments in. I know a lot of you had issues wanting to know right away if your wire transfer went through. Know that with the system here, it takes a day or two for the university to let us know, so that might be why you haven't gotten confirmation from our end. But as soon as we get it, Colin sends you guys an email, or I'll make sure he sends you an email. And for those of you who haven't paid, I know there's been some conflicting information regarding when the payment is due. So as soon as you guys can get it to us, I know the accounting department has said they'll give you guys till June 15th for the first payment.
They're nice guys sometimes.
Yeah. So if you're planning on doing one payment or splitting into two, I think June 15th is the absolute last deadline. But I know Josue had told you guys in the last presentation to do it
by the end of the week.
End of the week this week. So not to worry, we're not going to kick you out. We're not going to come chasing you. So yeah, I mean. Okay.
Back to the housing. If they can't get back to us today, are we automatically assuming that they're not staying at the hotel, or?
With Monday being a holiday, I don't think we'll be doing anything until Tuesday. Okay. So I'll speak with Mark, and we'll probably reach out to them individually to kind of get a confirmation of what they're planning on doing. Yeah. But thank you to all of you guys who have filled it out, picked roommates. Yeah, you guys are.
We strongly recommend to stay at the hotel, guys. Yeah. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but your experience that you'll have with your classmates is going to be so much better, and to not have to hop on the train at 11 o'clock at night when you get done with all of your teamwork, it's just going to be, so welcome, and you're going to enjoy it so much better. So definitely think about it. One other reminder is the GCX. I know that we've been having so many issues with certificates and tokens and Duo and
security settings and company computers and conversations with MIT Help Desk, but
so I'm hoping that by Sunday, everyone will be good to go. I think we only have, what, 2 or 3 people that are
Two or three, yeah. And we're working on it. I see the emails coming through. So
yeah, we're in it with you guys. Yeah. We're going to figure this out. And that's why we added. So last year, imagine we were doing all of this while people were trying to actually start the GCX and do graded problems. So we added in this extra week of safety stock to make sure that we could account for all these problems. So no worries if you're just getting access to it last night or this morning. There's just a few little documents that you need to read through in there, watch a video, and then you'll be good to go for Monday when the real course starts.
And just a reminder, I mean, none of you guys are here in the US, but Monday is a holiday here. So if you have any questions and we don't answer them right away, just know that we're keeping track, but we're not ignoring you. Yeah, we're not ignoring you. We're just not at work because it's a holiday.
We're having a few beers on the beach. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. It's gonna rain, but yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Oh, one other reminder. So the graded assignments start on Monday for the GCX. Any email questions that you have, and we'll flash this email up at the end as well. need to go to the gcx.gclog at mit.edu. That will assure that your questions get straight to the course team, and also so that we're not flooding our inbox with those questions. And also just make sure that you keep in mind the academic honesty policy around the GCX. We want you guys to collaborate. We want you to ask questions, but when it comes to the graded problems, this GCX is 20% of your grade. So we want to know what you know, not what the class as a whole knows, to make sure that when you get here, we know how to address any any questions or maybe things that we need to catch you up on. This is just a really great way to level set. And we take academic honesty really seriously here. So we want to hold all of you to those high standards as well. Anything else I've missed?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right, let's get into this resume webinar and start talking resumes. Okay, so before we get started, if I can have all of you take out a copy of your most recent resume. I realize that all of your resumes are going to be in a little bit different form. That's totally fine. The point of this webinar is really just to get all of you up to speed with the requirements that we have. As I mentioned in the last webinar, we will be collecting all of your resumes, and your resumes will be part of a larger book that all 6 Scale Network centers will be a part of. And it's my goal to make sure that all of you have the best resumes in there so that if you're looking for a job, you will be very attractive to employers. So as we go along, mark down any of those questions on your resume. So let's go to the first slide here and talk about, keep going. Sorry, the slides are a little delayed. Okay, so what is a resume? It's a brief account of your education, your qualifications, your previous experience, but really in this day and age, it's a marketing tool. You are the product that you're selling, and your resume is how employers will get a first impression of you before you are even out there in the world. Aaron and I were talking about this before the resume, or before this webinar, and he reminded me that this is not your life story, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to put every job on the resume. When I applied to MIT, I didn't put down that I worked at a store putting stuff back on the shelf, or worked at a movie theater.
Right.
I mean, you gotta make sure you know your audience, make sure they see what goes to everything.
Exactly, and it's because it's a really great way to direct the interview. So for example, if you're going in for a job in supply chain, again, you don't have to put that you worked at the Gap, 15 years ago. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. This is something when I graduated from college, so you guys know I'm old. When I graduated from college, you literally went to apply for jobs in the store with a paper resume. You went in, you talked to the store manager. That is not the way things are anymore. In 2016, over 94% of resumes were submitted online or via email. So what does this mean? It means that you have to have a resume that's easily submitted over the internet, but it also means that your social media profile is your resume. So as you can see in this little comic here, this is one of my favorite HR comics. The hiring manager's looking at him. So I looked at your Facebook page and, oh man, there's no way you're getting this job. I can't tell you how many students that I've worked with back when I was a recruiter, applicants that I worked with. I looked at their Facebook profiles and their LinkedIn profiles before they came in. And if their LinkedIn profile and their Facebook didn't match up, they were super professional on LinkedIn, but on Facebook, they were, dancing topless on top of the bar. It made me think twice a little bit. So,
I mean, not to scare any of you guys, but you should all be under the impression that we have checked to see if you're on Facebook, what your Facebook pages look like. So just throwing it out there that even for a program like this, we do some searching on social media.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean you can't have fun though. We want you guys to have fun, be authentic, but just remember, anything that you put on there, you want it to be okay that your future employer might see you. The same thing goes for Twitter. So I actually had a very good friend of mine who is very, very political and started posting very political tweets on Twitter and ended up not getting a job at a very reputable consulting firm here in Boston because of the way that they were representing themselves on Twitter. So all we're asking is for all of you to be cognizant. We actually have one question that just came in asking from Eric. Katie, is it okay if I don't have Facebook? Yeah, absolutely. It's totally fine if you don't have Facebook. We do post some things for GCLOG on Facebook, and there's a Facebook community. So if you want to be a part of that community, certainly join Facebook. You don't have to, I always tell people, you can always open up the profile. You don't have to be the person that goes on there and, posts a picture of your cereal in the morning and then takes a picture on your way to work and, tells us, how your coffee was at your desk. Like, you can just use Facebook as the marketing tool that it is, as well as like how we do for GCLOG, and we use it as a way to send out announcements and reminders to you. But yes, absolutely not required at all. Great question, Eric. Thanks for sending that in. All right, we ready to move on? Have we talked enough about social media?
I think so.
Okay, so the key, before you begin to start your resume, I'm guessing that all of you already have a resume that you've been using, but keep these tips in mind as you rewrite your resume, as well as when you tailor your resume to the scale book. These are going to be two very different resumes, and Arn and I have both heard from people like, do I have to do the scale resume? Yes, unfortunately you do have to do it, but it doesn't have to be the one that you use for everything. So Arn and I both have multiple versions.
Yeah, I mean, every time I apply for a job, so making one specifically for scale should not be an issue for me.
But so before you start writing your resume, we recommend conducting a little bit of a self-assessment. Go through all of your experience and really look at how that experience relates to the career area and the employer that you're applying to. Identify what the target audience is, and then make sure that as you're doing that, you review the job description and put keywords into your resume. More and more, the first person that sees your resume is a computer now. It's not an actual human being, and that computer is looking for keywords that are in that job description to pull out of your resume. I suspect that those algorithms will get smarter as we go along, but in the meantime, it's really important to make sure that you've gained an understanding of the skills that are needed so that you can plug those into your resume. All right, so moving on, there are many different, we can go to the next one actually. There are many different resume formats to use, but here at CTL and in GCLOG, we really recommend using the chronological form, but also for those of you who have been in the workforce for a while, a functional resume might be the best. But let's go on and we can talk a little bit about the chronological resume. So for most of you, you are someone who's had pretty consistent work experience. You don't have a whole lot of significant gaps. You're looking to stay in the same industry. This is really the best way for you to represent yourself because it's going to emphasize the job title that you had. Most of you should have a pretty progressive history. So you've shown that you've been in a role, you've been promoted, and it gives you the opportunity to show that progression as you go. This resume isn't a good form to use for people who change jobs frequently, or if you're looking to change your career path. So for example, for me, I went from my first job out of college, I was managing a distribution center, and I decided from there I wanted to go into more of a marketing rotational program. So I really took more of a functional approach to my resume, and let's switch to the next slide. That tells you a little bit more about functional. So functional allows you to take key skills and group your experience into key skills. Like I said, 99% of you, this will not apply to you because you've probably only had one or two jobs in your work history. But this kind of resume became particularly popular in 2009, 2010 with the financial crisis, because a lot of people had big gaps in their resumes and they were trying to find ways to fill in their resume to make their resume more interesting. So they did things like volunteering for nonprofits and working in different classrooms. And so that helped them to have a more fulfilled resume without showing those huge gaps. All right, good. So let's go on to the million-dollar question. What are we requiring for this scale resume book that we keep talking about? Like I said, this is a compilation of all of the 6 scale programs. It has a standard look and format to it. It will be posted to the SCM website and distributed to companies during IAP. At the bottom of the slide, I want you guys to look very carefully at how to list GCLOG. This is the only way that you are to represent yourself in this program. I know that sounds really strict, but we've had a lot of people in the past who have misrepresented this certificate and misrepresented it unintentionally. So they were really doing this in full honesty. And we actually had a student 2 years ago who the way they wrote it on the resume led someone to believe that they had attended the MIT degree program and not the certificate, the GCLOG certificate. And the company, which was Johnson & Johnson, rescinded the offer because they believed that the person was being unethical. So it's super important. We stress this to you guys. We stress this to all of the students across the Scale network. And we just ask that you represent it in a consistent way.
So quick question that came in that hopefully you can answer, Katie.
Yeah.
This is from Eric again. To describe the achievement, should he begin the sentence with a verb? Improve, that's how they usually do it.
Okay, we'll actually talk about that. So I have, in a couple slides going forward, we'll talk a little bit about power statements, and I'll address that. And if in that slide, if that doesn't address your question, then we'll make sure to go back to it offline. All right, so let's go on to effective resume writing. You want to make sure that you are communicating your accomplishments as quickly and concisely and organized as possible. On average, there was a study that was done, recruiters spend 5 seconds looking at your resume. That is not a lot of time at all. And as our attention spans wane, I'm sure this will be the other thing that was really surprising to me in this study is even engineers, as they're being recruited, the 2 things that recruiters are looking for on resumes are to see leadership and productivity. So in the packet that I send out to you later today, you'll see some keywords. Make sure that you're using a lot of those keywords in your resume writing, because that'll help you use the right words, and when they're trying to put your resume through the robots, they'll be able to pull it out. Also, that's why we've put a huge emphasis on the leadership component in our program, because more and more people need to be able to go out in the workplace and not just do the quantitative things and prove that they can do math, but they actually have to be able to present and show leadership and lead teams, in addition to those engineering skills. Anything you would add to that?
I'm not an engineer,
yeah.
So my resume is a little bit different than what you're looking for from them.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go on to some tips. When you're writing your resume, try to use the 10 to 12 point font. 1-inch margins are recommended. I know you all want to show your creativity when you're writing, but save that for your Facebook page or LinkedIn or design work that you're doing. Creative fonts can be distracting, and in a lot of cases they're going to be viewed as unprofessional. So try to stick to, whether it's for the Scale resume book or for your regular resume, stick to the plain ones: Times New Roman, Arial. There's a lot of good clean fonts out there, and also use a font that everyone has on their computer. I learned this the hard way today when I designed a presentation that had Myriad Pro in it, and one of my colleagues tried to download it and didn't have that font on their computer, and it completely changed the formatting of the presentation and thus made me look like I didn't know what I was doing. So keep those things in mind.
Yeah, keep it basic. Don't have to do anything.
Don't be fancy.
Yeah.
And for the resume book, it must be one page. Because if you guys can imagine, we're going to have 200 students. It's the difference between a 200-page book and a 400-page book. And Sam really doesn't want to have to put together a 400-page book, for example.
It's not easy to carry around. So.
No, exactly. And yeah, you don't want the recruiters to have to carry around an encyclopedia. Okay, so now let's talk about some common resume errors. I know a lot of you are probably looking at this and are very surprised. When I first started teaching this course, it surprised me how many of the students came to me with their photo on their resume. They had their marital status, their nicknames, totally inappropriate email addresses. And so we recognize that culturally, things might be a little different. We know that in Latin America, most people and most employers are going to ask for what your marital status is. They might ask for a social security number. You might put a photo on there. For us, save the glamour shot for your passport photos. You don't need to include it on your resume. The other thing that for us as native English speakers, maybe doesn't always resonate is the using the wrong tense or using the wrong version of there and there, or effect versus affect. Just be really, really careful with those kind of things, and that's why we're here to help you as well. We'll take and by we and me, I'll take a look through. These guys are like, I'm not going to edit their resumes. We'll take a look through and we'll try to help you as much as we can. But make sure that when you're doing your resume that you have someone to edit it for you and take a second look through it. Okay, so now this should address, was it Eric's question?
Yes.
Okay, so I have this format that I think is really helpful when you're thinking about writing accomplishment statements. So if you think of the acronym PAR, so your project, the action, and the results. So write it down on a piece of paper. What is the project that you did? What was the action that you did while doing that? And then what was the result? And if you translate that into an accomplishment statement, it's a much more concise sentence, and it tends to hit all of the things. You want to make sure that you are including a result, because for a hiring manager that's looking through a resume, they want to see, okay, this is the action that you did. Great, you did the action, but show us like how much money did it save? What were the efficiencies? Things like that. Let's see.
So would you say adding numbers is important? Is that something that stick out?
I think it definitely depends on the position. So for example, if you're applying for a position that one of the requirements is they want you to increase savings or increase efficiencies. So for like a procurement position, for example, I think it's really important to show how you've saved that company money. And even in the case of if you're applying, I don't know, for an academic administrator role, you want to show like, this is how I've increased the class size. Being able to quantify things for people, I think, is always a little bit more helpful. Sometimes people think of numbers only when they're applying for sales positions, but I think it really applies to everyone. Oh, it looks like Eric has another for us. Is it important to put the place of birth? No, you do not need to put the place of the birth. The only exception to that, I would say, would be if you hold multiple passports. So for example, if you're living in Argentina, but you have a passport from, I don't know, Italy, because your father was born in Italy, and you have a European passport, and you're applying for a position in Europe, a lot of companies would like to see that additional passport, but not necessarily your place of birth. All right, do we have any other questions, Aaron? I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. And Eric, if I didn't answer your question, send in another question, but I think that should have. Okay, so the last thing, this is our motivational statement for you. There is no one way to write your resume. Every resume is as unique as all of you are. There is room to be yourself. The only exception to that, and you're gonna get sick of me saying this, is for the Scale resume book. Later today, I'm gonna send you out a template. Please, 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 please do everything you can to replicate the resume that is in front of you with your information, and then that's what we'll work from when you're here in July. It's important to point out that we will spend more time on this when you're here. So we'll spend some time on your resumes. We will spend some time on practicing interviews. We'll update your LinkedIn profiles. So this isn't the only career development advice that you're going to get, but we thought it was very important to start out with this and to give you an opportunity to work on your resumes before you get here. And
yeah.
so we have Aaron.
Looks like we got a question from Ricardo. He wants to know if it's okay to use his home address on his resume.
I'm not totally sure what that question is. I think, yeah, definitely. If it's a question between using your parents' address or your address, I think you would tailor it to where you're looking for a job. For example, I grew up in Minnesota and I went to college at the University of Wisconsin, and I wanted to apply for jobs out here in Boston. And so on my resume, I used my aunt's address in New York City to show that I was already out here. And I think you actually have a similar.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Boston area, but was living in Washington, D.C. and working in Washington, D.C. when I applied for this job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went ahead and used my parents' address.
Yeah.
So easier.
Yeah. So it's totally fine as long as you're being truthful and you fully intend to move to that city. I think it's fine to use that address. So I hope that answers your question and what you were looking for. Other questions?
Yeah, it looks like we're getting some more specific questions regarding people's resumes. So
okay.
Roberto wants to know if you have experience as a teacher besides your regular job. Do you include it?
Yes, absolutely. So that's where the functional resume might be a little bit more useful for him. So in the case of the Scale resume book, try to focus on your experience. But for example, if you decide that you want to apply for a researcher position or a teaching position, then split out professional and then put all your professional experience, and then split out maybe educational or research. The same thing goes if you've spoke at conferences or you've done special trainings. So I've in my consulting role, I did a lot of I would go and I would teach a 1-week course. I list that as separate, other information. That's for the expanded resume though. For the Scale resume, keep it very concise, 1 page. You'll see the different categories that we've put on there. It's really, again, guys, just to keep you all on an even playing field.
Great.
Do we have any other questions?
Doesn't look like we have any other questions.
Okay, perfect, guys. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Like I said, this is just the beginning. We're just starting on this process with you, so we will spend plenty more time going over your resumes. We'll spend lots of time while you're here practicing your interview skills and updating those LinkedIn profiles. If you have questions in the meantime, you definitely know how to get a hold of both of us.
Both of us.
You've done a very good job of that. And in the meantime, just make sure that, going back to the reminders, making sure that you sign up for your housing, making sure you get your invoice paid.
Send us the photos. Yeah, that'd be great. So we can get your IDs ready to go.
And get some sleep this weekend, because next week the GCX starts, and guys, it's hard. It's really hard. So make sure that you're prepared, because this is going to be an amazing journey to go on together.
And we will make sure to send these slides out
Yep.
for everyone to have. So if you want to go back and see anything.
And like I said, I'll send out a packet later today that has some examples and some tips, and it also has some examples of cover letters as well. And it looks like David just sent in another question. David, always at the last minute with that question. You keep me on my toes. Is it important to have your LinkedIn profile and your resume looking exactly the same? No, not necessarily. You want to make sure that you're representing GCLOG in the same manner, both on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile. But maybe on your LinkedIn profile, you'll have examples of transcripts, or you'll have different endorsements that you've done.
Or other positions that you've had and don't feel are applicable to the position you're applying. I
Exactly.
think it's a good place to have it. So
exactly. So definitely don't be so focused on keeping them exactly the same. You really have to look at tailoring this for the audience. So your LinkedIn profile, again, you're not going to put your job stocking shelves
nope.
on your LinkedIn profile. And you're probably not going to put that on your resume either, to be real. But anyways, pick and choose and make sure that you're representing yourself in the most honest, authentic way. Really, that's what it comes down to. And we're here to help you guys. So if you have questions, run it by us. And with that, we will see you next Friday. Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.